There is a quiet moment that comes after 50. It doesn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It slips in unnoticed, between two ordinary days when nothing feels wrong, yet something feels off. You wake up. Your body still works. Your life still looks intact from the outside. People tell you you've earned and comfort. They say you're safe now, established, past the dangerous years. But comfort has a darker twin, and it waits patiently. After 50, time changes its behavior. It stops rushing. It stops warning you. It starts watching. You don't feel like you stare running out of life. You feel like you finally have enough of it. Enough money, enough experience, enough excuses to stop paying attention. That's how it begins. Nothing dramatic happens at first. No collapse. No single bad decision you can point to later and say, that was it. Instead, life starts leaking away in places you don't check anymore. Small habits, quiet choices, thoughts you repeat so often they start sounding like truth. After 50, the most dangerous losses don't look like losses at all. They look like rest. They look like routine. They look like saying, I'll do it later. Later becomes a year. A year becomes silence. And silence becomes a kind of agreement with time itself. This is where most people misunderstand what ruins them. It's not tragedy. It's not failure. It's not even bad luck. It's the slow decision to stop fighting for things that once mattered. To stop questioning. To stop imagining a future that demands effort. History is full of civilizations that didn't fall because they were attacked, but because they believed the worst was already behind them. Psychologists have a word for it. Sailors had a superstition for it. Every aging person feels it, but rarely names it. The moment when vigilance fades and decay is allowed to feel normal. After 50, life doesn't waste itself all at once. It is wasted in fragments. 7. To be exact. 7 patterns so common they feel harmless. 7 ways people quietly trade the rest of their life for familiarity. You may already recognize one. You may be living inside another. And there is one, just one, that once it takes hold, almost no one escapes. Because by the time you notice it, the damage feels irreversible. And the most terrifying part, you still wake up tomorrow, believing everything is fine. But it isn't so. And the first sign is already there. At first, nothing feels dangerous. In fact, it feels like the opposite. After 50, life often settles into something predictable. The sharp edges smooth out. The chaos quiets. You know your routines. You know your people. You know what tomorrow probably looks like. And that familiarity creates a powerful illusion. The illusion that the hardest part is over. You survived your mistakes. You outlived your risks. You handled the storms that once kept you awake at night. So you tell yourself, if nothing broke me then, nothing will break me now. This is where the trap tightens. Because safety, when it goes unquestioned, turns into blindness. History shows this again and again. Empires didn't fall while they were struggling to survive. They fell after stability, convinced them growth was no longer necessary. Psychologically, the same pattern unfolds in people. After 50, many stop scanning the horizon. They stop asking uncomfortable questions. They stop preparing, not because they are lazy, but because they believe preparation is no longer required. You begin to say things like, I've done enough. I'll deal with it later. This is just how life is now. Those sentences feel reasonable, responsible even, but they carry a quiet arrogance, the belief that tomorrow will always resemble today. You trust systems without inspecting them. Your body, your relationships, your mind, your sense of purpose. You assume they will keep working because they always have. This is the same assumption that doomed ships sailing calm waters into unseen reefs. The same confidence that kept cities from reinforcing walls they no longer believed they needed. After 50, Danger rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers through comfort. And denial doesn't look like ignorance. It looks like optimism. You laugh off the warning signs. You rationalize the fatigue. You normalize the boredom. You call disconnection peace. But peace without intention is just decay moving slowly enough to feel polite. And somewhere quietly, patiently, life is taking notes on what you are no longer defending. The illusion of safety doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks, and the first crack always appears in a place you think doesn't matter anymore. You still feel it soon, and when you do, you'll tell yourself it's nothing. That's how it always starts. The first cracks never feel urgent. They arrive disguised as minor inconveniences, easily explained, easily ignored. A morning where your body feels heavier than it should. A conversation you avoid because it feels tiring. A goal you quietly stop mentioning because saying it out loud now feels embarrassing. You tell yourself it's normal. Age, stress, weather, circumstances, and in isolation, each excuse sounds reasonable. But cracks are never meant to be seen alone. They only tell the truth when you look at them together. After 50, many people begin shrinking their lives without realizing it. Not dramatically, subtly. They drive a little less. They socialize a little less. They challenge themselves a little less. Not because they can stat, but because it's easier not to. Psychologically, this is where the danger sharpens. The brain rewards avoidance. It labels comfort as wisdom. It convinces you that wanting less is the same as needing less. So when curiosity fades, you call it maturity. When ambition softens, you call it contentment. When loneliness creeps in, you call it independence. But something inside you notices the difference. There is a quiet tension you can quite name. A sense that days are blending together, that weeks are passing without leaving a mark. You feel busy, but not alive. Occupied, but not fulfilled. These are the first cracks. And almost everyone dismisses them, because acknowledging them would require a terrifying admission. That time is no longer something you spend casually. So you distract yourself. Screens, habits, routine pleasures that numb, rather than nourish. You promise yourself you'll get back to it someday. Back to learning. Back to building. Back to becoming someone new. But someday has a cruel habit. It keeps moving. And the cracks widen not from neglect, but from the belief that they will heal on their own. They run tight, and the longer they go unexamined, the more force they gain. Because cracks don't stay quiet forever. Eventually, they demand attention. And when they do, they will no longer ask politely. At some point, the cracks stop being theoretical. They become visible. What once felt like mild discomfort now has weight. Fatigue lingers longer. Motivation doesn't return the way it used to. Conversations feel shallow, or exhausting, or both. You begin noticing changes, but you explain them away with impressive logic. It's just a phase. Everyone my age feels this. I've earned the right to slow down. These explanations don't come from ignorance. They come from fear. Fear of admitting that something important is slipping. Fear of confronting how much effort it might take to reclaim it. Fear of discovering that time has become less forgiving. So denial becomes sophisticated. You surround yourself with people who reinforce it. Stories that normalize it. Statistics that make it sound inevitable. Societies do this too. When systems begin to fail, leaders don't announce collapse. They reframe decline as transition. They call decay adjustment. On a personal level, it sounds like this. I'm just focusing on peace now. I don't need as much as I used to. I'm set and fine. But fine is often a warning sign in disguise. Emotionally, this is when the toll deepens. Relationships grow thinner, not through conflict, but neglect. Dreams aren't abandoned. They're postponed indefinitely. The inner voice that once challenged you grows quieter. You stop arguing with yourself, and that sip's dangerous. Because growth always involves friction, and a life without friction slowly loses its shape. Somewhere in this phase, a realization tries to surface, a heavy one, that you are no longer moving towards something. You are merely maintaining what remains. But instead of listening, most people double down on denial. They say, this is enough. This is stability. This is peace. Yet beneath that calm is a growing sense of loss. Not for what was taken, but for what was never pursued. And that realization, once fully formed, is almost unbearable. So it's pushed down, ignored, buried under routine. But buried truths don't disappear. They wait, and soon the weight of ignoring them becomes heavier than the fear of facing them. That sits when everything changes. There is always a moment when things could still have been saved. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't feel urgent. And that sips why it sips mist. After 50, this moment often arrives quietly. A thought you push away. A decision you delay. A warning your body or mind delivers in a whisper instead of a scream. You feel it when you realize something important is fading. Not gone, fading. Your sharpness, your curiosity, your sense of meaning. And for a brief window, you still have a choice. This is the moment where effort could reverse the drift, where discomfort could lead to renewal, where facing truth could still reshape what's left. But effort feels heavier now. Change feels riskier, and comfort argues convincingly. So you choose the familiar. You tell yourself, you start tomorrow. Next month, after things settle down. That delay feels harmless, even responsible. But it is a decision. This is the fatal choice. Not choosing destruction, but choosing not to choose at all. Psychologically, this is known as passive surrender. Not giving up explicitly, just allowing momentum to decide for you. Regret doesn't appear immediately. At first, there beast relief. Relief that nothing had to change. Relief that no hard conversations were needed. Relief that you didn't have to confront your own limits. But relief is temporary, because time doesn't pause out of gratitude. Weeks turn into years, and slowly, imperceptibly, options disappear. The body recovers less. The mind resists effort more. Opportunities stop appearing. Not because the world is cruel, but because you stopped moving toward them. And one day, without warning, you realize something terrifying. The window has closed. Not completely, but enough that reopening it would require a strength you no longer recognize as yours. That sips the point of no return. Not the end of life, but the end of possibility as you once knew it. From here on, consequences don't announce themselves as punishments. They arrive as limits. And limits are far more difficult to fight. What comes next isn't set chaos. It's something quieter, something colder. And once it begins, it moves without asking permission. The collapse doesn't crash. It settles. There's no single moment where everything falls apart. No dramatic breakdown. No clear line between before and after. Just a gradual thinning of life. Days lose their texture. Mornings feel identical. Time passes faster. Not because you were busy, but because nothing stands out enough to slow it down. Confusion creeps in quietly. You forget why certain things once mattered. You struggle to explain what you're looking forward to. When asked about the future, you answer with practicalities instead of hope. Fear doesn't scream here. It hums. A low, constant awareness that something is missing, but unnamed. You feel it in the pauses between conversations, in the evenings that stretch too long, in the way silence stops feeling peaceful and starts feeling empty. Emotionally, this is where numbness appears. Not sadness, not anger. Numbness, a protective layer that keeps disappointment at bay, but also blocks joy. People around you may not notice. You still function, You still show up. You still smile when required. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. Inside, however, there's a quiet mourning, not for a person, not for a past event, but for a version of yourself that feels unreachable now. This is the consequence of what was ignored. Not punishment, but erosion. A slow wearing down of meaning. And erosion is dangerous because it doesn't hurt until there's nothing solid left to stand on. At this stage, many confuse endurance with strength. They say, I'm fine. I manage. I get through the day. But getting through the day is not the same as living it. And then comes the most unsettling realization of all, that if nothing changes, this is how it will stay. Not worse, not better, just empty enough to feel tolerable. But tolerance is not fulfillment, and the human mind, even when quiet, knows the difference. What follows is not despair, it's clarity, and clarity, when it finally arrives, is impossible to unsee. What remains after everything erodes is not chaos, it is awareness. A still, uncomfortable clarity settles in, one that doesn't stay, accuse, but doesn't forgive either. You begin to see your life as a whole, not in highlights, but in patterns. You recognize how often you chose ease over meaning, how frequently you postponed discomfort, and with it, growth. How many days were spent waiting for a motivation that never came. This realization doesn't arrive with panic. It arrives with weight. There is grief here, not loud, not dramatic. A quiet mourning for paths not taken. Conversations never started. Versions of yourself that remained theoretical. And the hardest part, you realize no one took these things from you. There was no villain, no betrayal, no single moment you can point to. Just a long series of small surrenders. Time feels different now. You don't see it as abundant. You see it as precise. Each remaining year suddenly matters, not abstractly, but urgently. And that awareness is painful, because it arrives late. Late enough that choices feel heavier. Late enough that mistakes feel permanent. Late enough that courage demands more than it once did. But it also brings something rare. Honesty. No more illusions of safety. No more denial dressed as peace. No more pretending tomorrow will fix what today avoids. This is the aftermath, not destruction, but reckoning. A moment where you finally ask the question you've been avoiding. If this is the direction I keep going, am I willing to accept where it leads? That question changes everything, because once asked sincerely, it cannot be unheard. And the answer, whatever it is, forces a final confrontation. One last chance to decide whether the rest of your life will be wasted quietly or lived deliberately. And that decision is closer than you think. If you've listened this far, it's because something in you recognized the path, not as theory, not as metaphor, as memory. The truth is simple, and that's what makes it terrifying. Life after 50 is not lost to age. It is lost to unconscious living. The 7 things that waste it are not dramatic sins. They are quiet permissions you give. To drift, to delay, to disengage. You don't wake up one day having wasted your life. You wake up one day realizing you were never paying attention while it was happening. This is the final warning. Not because time is cruel, but because it is honest. It gives you exactly what you practice. If you practice avoidance, it gives you absence. If you practice comfort, it gives you numbness. If you practice awareness, even now, it gives you something rare, a chance, not to be young again, not to erase regret, but to choose deliberately how the remaining pages will read. After 50, every choice echoes louder. Every day either tightens the trap or loosens it, and the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself is that there will be a better moment to begin. There wants to be. There is only this awareness, this pause, this breath, and what you decide to do with it. Because wasting your life after 50 is not about running out of time. It's about forgetting that you still have some.